than ordinary. Today, it's going to be, I'm offering some challenges to, there's some local churches in Honolulu, Hawaii, and so I'm at one of them today where I intend to challenge views. I'm gonna write down simple ideas in the interest of improving the world, but that in part has to do with even what Christians' own ideology suggests, that without messianic heroes or without other characters, you can't even, like, that's like a necessary prerequisite to a better world. Like, and where I'm coming in is I'm suggesting that no, we need real everyday humans to solve the world's problems with different ideologies and different science. And so let's see. So I basically have let's see what I'm looking at. I've got my whiteboard here. There's a church right over there. It says a church you can call home, which it sounds nice on the surface, but a lot of these kinds of churches have a hierarchy where the people who talk make a lot of money. I think a church should operate more like a family where everyone doesn't make their money off of listening to other, like preaching to other people, quote unquote, or entertaining other people, but rather they make money in other ways. Not only off of, it's like a family always charging. It's like the whoever the church, the pastor family, it's like them always charging everybody else to entertain them, because it's essentially what they're doing. It's motivational talking. That's what a church is. But so it would be fine if it was all just to pay for the building, and that they all came in and that they were all kind of equals. But that's not the case. There's this very hierarchical, almost like a blessing, like a bless me so I can be worthy of being a pastor or whatnot. In a real family, I think everyone should talk, have equal time to talk, and shouldn't charge for it. But that being considered, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to write is kind of a challenge to say, do we want to say something like, how about we go with this? Heaven, okay. Heaven versus reincarnation. Carnation. Come on, fit it all. Okay, so that would be the first. It doesn't look that good. Let me see if I can modify that. Just a little better. So that would be my first one. So the idea here is that, is heaven such a good idea? Because if you're going to be suspended in a quote unquote perfect realm forever, see, you can't experience life unless there's the potential for the bad, and health problems, financial problems, everything. You can't experience the good, because the good is only within the context of the bad. And so so that would be my first one. And then, like, would you rather? So another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into this idea of belief versus preference. And because I would translate belief to mean something more like a preference. But the question is it like, would people prefer a heaven, or would they prefer to reincarnate? And then the question is, like, would they prefer a Jesus, which is actually a homophobic character who will, in theory, reign over in such a way that's kind of tyrannical. It's kind of using like magical forces, and not really using real science and practical applications, which we've actually been doing over the past centuries. Over time, we have improved the world, and so let's not insult our intelligence either, and let's not defer the responsibility of improving the world to other people, other entities from another world. Like, why should, like, that actually defeats the whole purpose of living in the physical dimensions. The purpose of it is to actually do stuff and figure out problems, create resolve. Subsequently, you'll feel accomplished, and you'll be able to feel like it's something real, even though it's all not real, because we go from lifetime to lifetime, from planet to planet, and we are all consciousness. But why don't we try to enjoy it for a little bit? Why don't we try to enjoy it, right? So the next question I'm gonna write is belief versus preference, because that's and then I'm going to touch on the psychology of that. So bear with me here. So, belief versus preference. Belief versus, wait, let's switch the camera for you guys. Preference. Okay. So what is a belief? Well, a belief is like for example, let's take something in the physical realm that we can all collectively agree upon. Something like let's say like a mountain, right? So like, would somebody say that they believe in a mountain, or they believe that it's real? No, it's like collectively agreed upon that we know it's real. So in that regard, why should we say we believe in anything? In fact, I would posit that all of the things in, like, all of the things to do with like believing and stuff, and like the rituals, like in different religions, there's different rituals about how, what people should do in order to, please a higher God, or quote unquote, and this heaven and hell, all these concepts. Like, it's really about what you prefer. Like, would you prefer to reincarnate? Would you prefer to be in a heaven where it's supposedly perfect and there's no challenges, but really there's no such thing as what do you call them, preferences, or there's no such thing as beliefs. Like, if you have to believe in something, then it's not real. Like, things you don't have to believe in are it's like a physical thing. Like, it's the idea of saying that you can worship a god, quote unquote, a physical object. Right, better help these people walk across the street. Yay! Woohoo! Made it! So it's this idea of that. Let's go. People think that you can walk across this. What am I saying? People think you can believe in whatever you want, but really, it's also a secret way of saying it's like people use these words, like fancy words, to try to trick you into. But what they're really saying is they prefer. Like when somebody says, "Oh, they don't believe that premarital intimacy is like necessary." Well, it actually is. Like, or it's like they prefer not premarital intimacy, and obviously that's a simple equation. Premarital intimacy, in fact, maybe I'll put that next on the board. Premarital intimacy has to do with premarital intimacy has to do with a preference, okay, a preference towards sex before marriage, and that's unloving, obviously. So why don't I write that on the board next, because that's definitely worth writing down. So let's bear with me for a second. I'm gonna write down. What am I gonna write? Gonna write down. Premarital intimacy is unloving. So let's write that down. Unloving. Okay, so what does that mean? On the surface level, it might sound like it's just an anti, like a counter of the culture of quote unquote open relationships, promiscuity, and women's free choice to do whatever they want, to dishonor their bodies, and then act like they can get married whenever they want and that they're worthy of marriage. But the whole point about marriage is only the man can propose, right? The man has to be the responsible party that says, yes, I'm willing and ready to caretake for a woman and to be her take care of the children and make sure that she can enjoy the benefits of being a woman, and so that's what that's what a man does, right? And then what does a woman do? Well, a woman, no one's willing to admit it, but a virgin woman is more attractive than a woman who's not had intimacy before, and the reason for that is because she's not only the intimate, the sexual aspect of, well, different people and then different experiences, and who would want somebody to be thinking of another experience they had when they're having their own experience, if you know what I mean? Like when they're having their own experience with okay, where was I? So sometimes I jump around, but let's try to stay focused here. Back to the idea, right? The idea is premarital intimacy. It's unloving. It's unloving because it implies that sex is more important than marriage. And, well, it's actually, I'm sure we'd agree that it's not. I'm sure we'd agree that what's important is, like I was talking about beliefs and preferences, what's important is what people prefer in life and their values. That's where you get the idea of the principled man, the man who will not engage in premarital intimacy because, or for that matter, commit to or marry a woman who is not who is not of the same religious predilections as him, because it's like that would cause strife and a disconnect in the family. It would make it so the mother, who's, in a perfect world, the father works, the mother raises the children instead of paying somebody else to do it. And so that's that. Let's try to keep going here. Let's see, what else could I kind of jot down on the board that's a challenge. Do we want to touch upon the world of where Jesus, quote unquote, actually, yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna write Jesus is unloving, because guess what? What does he do? He wants to be a tyrant, and he wants to kill the non-believers, and he wants to. I mean, should I write Jesus is evil? Then that would be really going for it. But Jesus is evil because he wants to kill homosexuals. So fuck it. Jesus is. Oh, actually, but I have to phrase it as a question, because if I just say Jesus is evil, then what ends up happening is people just see it and they don't think about it. They get defensive. So instead of phrasing it as a command statement, like believe this, I'm gonna phrase it as an intellectual quandary. Is Jesus benevolent? I'll use a little fancy language to get people kind of going on that intellectual spin. But you get the idea, right? This is like a carefully crafted thing. It's like very calculated. And check it out up here, guys. Although I did put some sunscreen on, I've got this massive 40-story skyscraper here, and it's providing me with enough shade that I need to do what I'm doing. So back into it. No, where was I? So I'm gonna write, is Jesus benevolent? That's what I'm gonna write. Okay, so is Jesus, right? And I'll fucking put that fucker in quotes, because is that even like something? Like, what is that? Like, it's some mythical character that people say is coming and say loves them, but if somebody loved you and was coming, then they would come already, based upon the mere equation that they could come whenever they want. They would promptly come to help people if they could. Is Jesus benevolent? Okay. All right. Now, it might seem like an odd question to pose, because there's lots of, that looks too much like a number 2. I'm gonna enhance I gotta work on my question marks, actually. How do you draw a nice question mark? Hold on here. So the thing is like, I think it's like this. Yeah, that's better. See that? That's a more of a accurate depiction. So, like on the surface, it looks like I'm like either attacking the church or I'm being. Is that? Can people see that? It's kind of dark. And when people think of the church, they think of like they think of they think of dancing and fun and singing together and kind of doing, fun, playful stuff. But the core essence of a church is actually supposed to be a closed off, private, by invite only establishment, kind of like a family operates. And it's supposed to be where people people take accountability, uh, and there's like an accounting system, like in Mormonism, or maybe it's Jehovah's Witness. There's like an official book that you're either in or out of. I think it's Mormonism, where if your name isn't written in the book, then you're not considered a Mormon, a practicing Mormon, and thereby there which benefit uh, uh, worthy of benefiting from the privileges of being part of a collective unit that can rely upon each other and collaborate. So maybe I shouldn't put it in quotes because it's a little bit sarcastic, but I mean it is definitely a dig. It's definitely a challenge to people's beliefs. But again, there's no such thing as beliefs, only preferences. So, but back to the point I was conveying there. So, the idea of a church on the surface may look like, yay, let's get together and, just fellowship, quote unquote, which is great, except for the fact that it's under the wrong premise. Because at the core of it, it's like when people think of Christians or Muslims, or particularly the more orthodox variant, they think of people who are responsible, who are financially prudent, who are respectful, who do not engage in premarital intimacy, who have a sacred and dignified and formal way of approaching life. But the thing is, in a lot of the like Christian churches in this day and age, what has occurred is people have what have they done? There's no accountability in the church. There's premarital intimacy. Everyone can join. It's more about pomp and circumstance and smoke and mirrors and people doing fun, cool things, but kind of paying for it. And then the higher ups in the church they make money off. They make like a profit off of it, and they live. Most likely, they're living better than the most of the patrons in the church. So it still involves this hierarchical thing. And at the end of the day, yes, a building. Let's say it's a building. Somebody has to be on the lease of the building. There has to be. There has to be some type of organizational, legal aspect to it, where yes, somebody is an authority in that regard, and the people all have to give that person money, but they should be realistic about what they can afford, and they should have transparency in the financials, so that if the church isn't bringing in enough money. And I think everyone should pay the same amount, because that way it's like realistic about what they can afford. It's like everyone should pay the same amount, so that way there's no preference of persons like, oh, this person's offering so much to the church, so they should be somehow thought of as, catered in such a way. It's like, no, we should all be equals, and it should be a thing more about like a brotherhood, and then there, of course, there should be like some grace periods where people are like, what are people like? Where people, let's move on to the next subject. This is kind of dragging already. You can see how I'll try to be following a train of thought, and eventually it'll wear off. But that's fine, because we can move on to another one. And let's see, that was pretty edgy. So what's another one we can write? How about this one? How about does Jesus love gays? And by love, maybe I should say approve, because we're trying to use technical language here. This is not a casual, playful thing. This is very serious. And again, I'm presenting it in a question format. I'm not projecting information out there. I'm offering a question. Obviously, there's implications, but still, it is a question. So, is Jesus homophobic? Is kind of a simple one. Is okay, let's write it down, because like the church likes to kind of hide over these things, and then they rely on the rest of the structure of the religion. Like, it's like saying this, guys. It's like saying, we our religion is, all healthy. It's all about what's the word? Homophobic. Phobic. And then some question marks here. Right? So, it's a question worth asking, because like I was saying, churches will kind of hide, they'll kind of hide under this auspice of rah-rah, we're all, God loves everyone, all this stuff. The idea of love, okay, is kind of specific to a small group of people. Like, people say they can love the world, but you can't technically. You can only love a small group of people, maybe 100, 200, 300 people who you see from probably week to week, or at least month to month, people who you know on a first name basis, people who you share the same core beliefs with. Like, I don't think we're ever going to all share the same core beliefs or cultural preferences. Like, even like, for example, me, like my core beliefs are veganism and no premarital intimacy. But then there are other secondary values that are specific to me that I wouldn't necessarily expect everyone to be aligned with, and one of them is, for example, the pet idea. Like, I don't personally want any pets. For me, my whole life revolves around women and her vulva. That's my life. I don't want to introduce anything to interfere with that. And especially, it's like a human thing. It's like, why would I want to interfere with? Why would I want to interfere with the human experience and detract from detract from detract from what? Detract from, the amount of time and investment put into children. Why would it, by taking care of pets instead? To me, it's a disturbing deviation from the human experience and the commitment to humanity, especially when you consider that humans. There are a lot of people who have pets that if the pets were strong enough, like a cat or a dog, and angry enough, they would kill humans and at least babies. So why would you harbor a creature that's a potential human predator? It means that it's like a human sacrifice. It means you either at a conscious or subconscious level are oppositional to the idea of being a human being. And so, but let's try to track back here. So let's get to let's see here. See people kind of part of the problem is the church is comprised of like men, women, and children. And really, it's really a man's, I think, kuleana, as we say in Hawaii, which means responsibility, to process and deal with these issues and work on how society works. Like, women are supposed to take care of children, and they have a more natural inclination to it. It's rare that women like to philosophize and like to invent and create and figure out how to run society. Some women like to do it, but it's more of a testosterone thing. Like, maybe if a woman has more of the testosterone thing, she'd be willing to do that. And if you're not careful, men, you'll lose testosterone. You'll lose testosterone. You'll lose testosterone if you don't eat right and exercise right, and then you'll start to gain estrogen, and that'll, and at the end of the day, as long as you're committed to the same core values as a couple, you'll be fine. You'll be happy. But like I was saying, it's like there's a lot of families that it's like the kid, or it's like, it's like the women or the kid and going to church, and so it kind of interferes with the process of actual constructive debate and defining what your quote unquote beliefs, aka preferences, are, and how you want to run your family. And practical conversation, not emotional conversation like rah rah, if you don't do this you're going to hell, or rah rah, Jesus is going to save you, feel good, and don't, like the motivational stuff is not that practical. So what is practical is stuff like, well, should this law be passed, or how, what's the best way to manage money, especially for our quote unquote church family, which is really a family. They say things can be too big to fail. A family can definitely be too big to fail, especially if they don't have generational thinking. They're not thinking in terms of like one person might be wealthy, but then are they setting themselves up for their future legacy of children doing the same work ethic as they did, or are they more concerned about buying fancy things in order to flaunt their wealth, which makes it more about them and not about their future legacy? So I think I'm going to jump into the next kind of topic. Let's see what I choose to write down, because I've had some kind of intense ones here, like kind of directly challenging, like who is this Jesus character? Is it an entity that you would want in your house? That, an entity that you would want to introduce into your society? Uh, okay, so. So, what are we gonna choose? What are we gonna choose? By the way, what time is it? It's okay. It's almost 9 o'clock. Let's see. What are we going to choose as a topic, as an item of conversation? And maybe this isn't the best location to do this, because although I'm getting a good, thorough, unobstructed live stream, at the same time I'm not really getting much engagement. Like I'm not really. And then it's it's a question of I'm either for or against the church, and then so there's a kind of contentious spirit, especially since I'm within proximity to a local church. But at the end of the day, it's like, what's the goal? The goal is my goal to connect with more family. That is a great goal. To find like-minded people as I am. That is a good goal. Maybe that is the goal I should be going with. But the truth is I think this might be the best way to do it, because my family members would be, if they were my family, then they would be in all likelihood with me on the street, engaging people. And so they would, if they see me on the street, and they, there's, I'm sure people in Hawaii know that I do this. Maybe I should send out an invite to join me. But then I have to make sure that, like, it has to be reduced a little. It has to be like, what are the core principles that I'm trying to expound upon? Oh, fucking Joey, dude. Joey, check it out. I'm at this. There's a church over here, right? It's a church, right? And I'm kind of writing down challenges here. If you see back earlier in the stream, you'll see yeah, check out the Aloha shirt. Nice, yeah. Some Aloha shirts are more pricey. Like this one was $100. So, a lot of tourists come to Hawaii and they buy cheap Aloha shirts. It's like, come on, if you can afford to trip to Hawaii, you should be able to get some nice, premium threads. So what I was deliberating on was, is this the best spot to do this? Like, maybe I should go over to Waikiki, where there's lots of people, and because you know what I've noticed so far. What's the commentary? You mean on the chat? There hasn't been any one tuning in, and as far as the public, they haven't engaged. What I've noticed is it seems like the majority of the people who go to the church are women, and that's because women have a natural desire for security, and the trade-off for security is you have to kind of follow. Yeah, I haven't had any engagement yet, but I have had some bad looks. Because I'm writing stuff like, I'm writing stuff like, is Jesus homophobic? Which I believe that yes, he is. But it's like, how do you reach out to people? And the reality is, maybe I shouldn't be trying to reach out to people, but I should be. My target audience should be men, because at the end of the day, it's men who, and maybe this is because women are sheltered, quote unquote, from the harsh truths of the world, from men who care about them, and maybe it's because women's natural comprehension for logic and individuated thinking or self-awareness or it's like it's not as prevalent as it is in men. Um, women like to more or less follow trends. But see, I'm like jumping around on topics here. So what I really want to do is I want to ask myself, like, what's my objective here? My objective is world peace. The only way that world peace can occur is by stable individuals, stable society, stable stable community, like local communities, then stable nationwide or communities, then stable international relations, and then that leads to a stable world. But it's like part of me is really wants to capitalize on the audiences that especially like the Christian church has gathered, because they kind of have presented this idea to the world that people are needed, like be they like a messianic figures or prophets or angels or like pastors. They presented this idea that people are needed in order to make the world a better place, and it's true that people are needed, because that's we have to resolve our own troubles as humanity. But then at the same time, it's like the question is, how do you resolve them? And like I said, stability, and like maybe I should be trying to seek out like a family, invite people. But then the thing that I need to remember is core values. Like, I can't be asking people for too many core values, because or I can't be expecting people to agree with too many of my positions, because then it's still going to be just me alone. So I need to like pick certain key core values. Like for me, for example, one would be celebrating and worshiping the vulva, the woman, and this is that both heterosexual men can do this, obviously, but also homosexual women, and also women themselves should be able to celebrate and focus on their bodies, and engage in self gratification and everything. And then that leaves out homosexual men, but they can play a supporting role too, because the reality is, if everyone was homosexual, then they wouldn't have a biological inclination to procreate. So it's not an insult towards homosexuals, but it's a biological reality that they can't see. Like, this is a real problem, and I'm not trying to be mean-spirited, but like all I'm seeing is women. It's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably like much more than the majority, maybe closer to 70% women that are attending churches these days. And the problem with that, guys, is that women kind of they operate with their emotions. Like, even a smart woman, she won't be as careful and discerning as for selecting a partner and a spouse. Even the smarter ones can be, at least when they're younger, they can be, and we can all be manipulated when we're younger. But I'm trying to create an environment where women don't have to be forced to be like the red pill community will. The red pill community will accuse men of being, like, oh, they're the ones who are the red pill community will accuse women of being like they're the problem. And the truth of the matter is they're not the problem. Women shouldn't have to be masculine. They should be able to be in their feminine, and the only way that's possible is if men be masculine. You see what see my logic there? So that being considered, I'm actually gonna wrap it up at this point, because I'm not really seeing the level of interaction I want, and there's just not that many people here. But Joey, it's been a pleasure kind of considering things. I intend to go live again in Waikiki. That should be in like 30 minutes. But I might want to decide what's a good time to do it, kind of calculate out my day. But again, it's been a pleasure. And glance through the earlier parts of the stream. I wrote some cool kind of debate challenges out to people, like, is Jesus homophobic? Like let's see, what else did I write? I wrote stuff like, is heaven a good idea? Because heaven to me is boring. I'd rather reincarnate. So yeah, aloha. Thank you, Joey. Peace, guys.